All right, well, welcome everyone. We are so excited to have you here. Just wanted to introduce myself and my colleague Eric. My name is Peter Ronigan, and I'm a licensed associate real estate person at Brown Harris Stevens on the Excelsior team. I've been in real estate for about 6 years now, and I'm just excited to be on this team that we have so much experience and background among all of us and really bring a lot to the table when it comes to transacting in real estate. But I also wanted to let my colleague and team lead Eric Gislason introduce himself as well.
Hi, everybody. My name is Eric Gislason. I am the founder of the Excelsior team, as Peter mentioned, at Brown Harris Stevens. I've been in real estate for 20 years this year, and have had quite a dynamic career. I was in real estate as an agent, then moved into management, where I was a director of sales and development, and did a lot of training and coaching. And after 10 years, I went back into the field as an agent and rebuilt my real estate career. In so doing, I built the Excelsior team. I also do a lot of training and coaching for the Real Estate Board of New York and the New York School of Real Estate, specifically around collaborative negotiation, buyer psychology, and I've been transacting in co-op sales and condo sales and single and multifamily home sales for the better part of 2 decades. So I'm so glad to be here with Peter so that we can give you a little sense of what this sales timeline looks like and answer questions that you might have, whether you're early in your search or whether you're a seasoned buyer.
Wonderful. And feel free, we want you to be comfortable. Feel free to turn off your camera, leave it on, ask questions as we go along, but we'll also save some time at the end to answer any questions you have. So let's begin here. I'm going to start by showing you just briefly the purchase timeline, each step that we're going to go over. And then after this, we'll go into more detail into each step and really unpack it and kind of make sure you understand each process that goes on and I guess the complexity and how we can help you along the way. But so step one, which I think is the most important, is you're going to build your real estate team. Having the right professionals in place ensures you're protected and set up for success along the journey. Then we have financial preparation and game plan. Yeah, understanding your finances early makes everything a lot smoother, and pre-approval strengthens your position when you're ready to make an offer. So we'll go into more detail later with that. Property search and tours. I think this is kind of the more fun part of the whole process. This is where we'll explore different neighborhoods. We'll get an idea of what you're looking for and figure out properties, neighborhoods, and refine what truly fits your goals with the search. Next, we have once you find and identify the right property, we're going to move into accepted offer and due diligence phase. So this is submitting an offer that's both strategic and well thought out, which we will help you with. And it's about timing, positioning, and really understanding what the seller's motivations are. Next, so in New York, we will more often than not prepare a board package, and then the commitment letter portion. So this is going to be, with co-ops and condos, this is part of the process where you have to fill out a board package and just kind of show your financial background and why you qualify for the building. And we have board approval. Oh, I'm covering the words here. Walk through and cleared to close. So this one is in regards to due diligence and just essential to review the contract, the building financials, and making sure everything is ready to go. And then last we have the closing. So this is the
Ooh.
the fun end part where all the hard work pays off. Everything comes together here. We'll do the final walkthrough, signatures, and you'll get the keys to your new property. Um, so let's break these down. So first, we're going to go over the build your real estate team. So New York is an attorney state. So part of that is you'll need an attorney. But first, you're gonna want to start by choosing your real estate advisor, or an exclusive buyer's agent is the more technical term. One point of contact to coordinate search strategy, pricing and comps, tour logistics, offer tactics, and board package prep. Among many other small things that you don't think about. Sometimes they're your therapist, sometimes they're your friend. So it goes, I remember seeing a list once where it was 100 things a buyer's agent does for you. There's just so many details, especially, in New York City that you don't think about going into buying a home. And it varies by building, so it's important to have someone that kind of knows, the building, the market, and all that good stuff. You're going to want to connect with a mortgage professional early. Interview 2 to 3 lenders or brokers just to make sure you find the best one for your fit for that matches you and what you're looking for. Get a fully underwritten pre-approval and a clear cost sheet, rate, points, taxes, insurance, closing costs. Ask about co-op condo nuances and rate lock options. And then, like I mentioned at the beginning, you're going to want to retain a New York City real estate attorney, specifically someone that specializes in, housing law and purchasing co-ops condos in New York City. You don't want someone that's from Ohio that doesn't even know what a co-op is. So it's important, we're happy to always refer attorneys we've worked with that we think are great and give you a list of options. They're going to handle the due diligence, the offering plan, amendments. They'll do the go over all within due diligence is they go over the offering plan, amendments, building financials, board minutes, house rules, litigation, and they protect your contract terms and deadlines. So yeah, this is building your team. I don't know, Eric, if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I'll just add a couple of insights or key points. One, I will say, as Peter mentioned, putting together your team is essential, and not all of this has to be in place at the first moment before you start doing all of the other things, getting a strategy in place with the financial statement and going out to search properties. But the more prepared you are, the stronger you're going to be in that negotiation. And we're often surprised, or clients are often surprised that their first tour out to view properties, if they are prepared to purchase or if they are looking within a 3 to 6 month timeline, they may find the property that they love on that first tour. And it surprises them and shocks them, and then all of a sudden they're behind the 8 ball because they haven't had the right conversations with mortgage professionals or real estate attorneys. And so it can't hurt to have these conversations up front. You don't need to make any sort of commitment to the mortgage professional or the real estate attorney. The real estate advisor, hopefully that would be us. We would love your business, but there is a level of commitment when it comes to buyer agency under the new rules, and I think we'll cover that at the end to go over what does it mean to have now buyer agency and how is that different from what the way the rules used to work. But when it comes to mortgage professionals, we can recommend mortgage professionals to you. We have a list of everybody who can be on our team, but that doesn't mean you have to use that person. As Peter mentioned, we just want to make sure that you're using someone who's going to be communicative, who's going to be professional, who's going to serve your interests, and who can collaborate with the entire team to make sure that you have the smoothest process possible. So you can work with the bank that you do most of your banking with. They have mortgage professionals that you can speak to. But we just want to make sure that you're working with team members who know this market, know co-ops and condos, know New York City, and are not behind the desk, as Peter said, somewhere in Iowa or something like that, where they don't know the market. So just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. So up next, we move into financial preparation and a game plan. So one of the first things we like to have our clients fill out is what's called a revenue financial statement. So this is when you work with your real estate advisor to complete the one-page financial statement mapping out assets, liabilities, income, and debt to income ratio. So this is important, especially in co-ops, because they really, I mean, look, you have to show every you have to be financially naked, as I've heard it said in the past. This is just a really good way to get a snapshot of where you are. It's good for you to see. It's good for us or whoever you work with to see to kind of figure out what is best as far as your budget. And this is also shared sometimes with the financing people you work with. You're going to want to set your budget, which kind of comes from that. Define a comfortable monthly number, mortgage, which would include your mortgage payment, your taxes, your common charges, or maintenance, depending on the building. Um, and this translate to a target price range. Then you're going to define priorities and value elements, set minimum and maximum goals, price limits and contingencies, note co-op board slash condo waiver steps, and outline key milestones from offer to closing. Map closing costs and post-closing liquidity co-ops versus condos and townhouses versus new development. So every building structure in New York is set up a little different. Co-ops are, it's a corporation, so you're buying shares versus a condo where it's more of a full ownership, but there's pros and cons to each type of building, which could be a whole nother presentation, just kind of breaking down the differences with those. An example of that is co-op flip taxes, post-closing liquidity, and condo townhouse mortgage recording tax, which is usually 1.8 to 1.925% plus title, sponsor fees and new developments. And that's good to know ahead of time when you're planning, just to see what fits for you, for your family, and financially what makes sense. And you're going to want to be financing ready. Recommendation is to get fully underwritten, which is called pre-approval, which is stronger than a pre-qualification. A pre-qualification is basically you submitting your just reaching out to a bank or mortgage professional saying, this is how much I have in the bank, and they kind of just take you for your word and say, okay, it sounds like you would be approved. But when they really do the fully underwriting and give you a pre-approval, that's a lot more of a stronger sense of what you qualify for. You're going to want to compare your loan options, fixed versus ARM, locking rates, etc. And this, part of your team is the mortgage person. If you are financing, if you're paying cash, this is, not relevant, but that's when this team, you can really get advice from the mortgage professional, from us, from our experience, and kind of get the best game plan as you move ahead to the next step.
I'll just finish off this. I'll just add a little bit here to what Peter said beautifully. I think, aside from that first step where we assist in putting together your real estate team, this step, this phase of the process is where your real estate professional really starts to show their value. And the reason we highlight this step, and I think it's often missed by real estate professionals, they want to get out there and show you properties, but the reality is you deserve a game plan. And the only way to really properly put a game plan together with you is through these steps that Peter laid out. That the REBNY financial statement, which is REBNY is the Real Estate Board of New York. It's the association that we belong to. But that REBNY financial statement, as he said, is just a measure of assets, liabilities, income, and then we can calculate through knowing those things what your debt to income ratio is. And both the bank is going to have requirements for debt to income and post-closing liquidity, but a co-op is going to have much more stringent qualifications or requirements when it comes to debt to income and post-closing liquidity. So when we can sit down with you and go through that game plan, then we can use that strategy to set your budget to make sure that we are honoring the amount of money that you want to spend on a monthly basis, that you understand what the all-in costs are monthly and what your pre-tax carrying costs are, as well as your after-tax carrying costs, because that's one of the benefits of purchasing is the tax deductibility of certain aspects of your monthly payments. But then also for us to understand and for you to understand and clarify what your priorities are in this search. And going through that process, that game planning process, really gets you clear on what your likes and dislikes are. Doesn't mean that we can't get cast a wide net and see a lot of properties and just really see a wide range at the beginning. But you're going to be much more clear about what you want and don't want, and also clear about what are the all-in costs, what are the frictional costs, what are the transactional costs of buying and selling real estate. So I love this slide, and I think it's again, I think this part of the purchase process is where a good buyer's agent really starts to add value to what you're trying to do.
Awesome. Beautifully said. All right. So let's move on. So the fun part, Pro-
Yay!
property search and tours. Um, so the way we like to do it is we like to define the bullseye, or I kind of, we'll go over with you what your target, our ideal home looks like, the location, the price, the amenities, all that good stuff. Um, so property type, target neighborhoods, must-haves versus deal breakers, laundry in the building or washer dryer, etc. We'll create a safe search, get daily alerts. We can communicate kind of with you what the most effective way for you, if you like, for us to send you an email. We have tools at Brown Harris Stevens where you can kind of join a collection, so to speak, and you can like it, request tours, that sort of thing. Or we can text you, whatever works best. Everyone's different with how they communicate, so we're good at adjusting for that. And a shared group thread and coordinate times to view properties. Single showings, one-offs, or multiple apartment tours. We can go, depending on your availability. Some people work 9 to 5. So Sundays are usually pretty heavy with open houses, but we can always, pop in when you need. And you want to cast a wide net. So we really try to, we search our company's search system. We search things like StreetEasy, Zillow. We talk to other colleagues that we work with to see if they have any properties that are coming up, try to see anything that's off market or not, and that's, I think, a good value add as well with working with an agent, is that we do this every day, and we know where to look and kind of find what the general public hasn't already seen. Gathering specific listing information. Note co-op requirements such as minimum down, post-closing liquidity, sublet, pied-à-terre, pets, price flexibility, buyer agent commission offered. So every listing, there's things we need to look for, especially co-ops, depending on how you're financing. For example, if a parent wants to gift money to their child to purchase in a co-op, some buildings don't allow that. So it's important before we, waste your time taking you to a property to find out that you wouldn't even qualify. So it's good to kind of, that's one of the things we like to do is to make sure it's worth your while and what you're looking for and what makes sense, which leads into touring with intention. So sequence efficiently, bring tape and notes, measuring tape to see, if your furniture will fit, and take notes. I kind of like to, have the top three in your head rotating and kind of, okay, this one I like better than that. So you don't get overwhelmed by, if we see multiple, like Eric said, sometimes you find it the first viewing because we want to show you the best of the best first. And so that's how that works. Test the light, the noise, water pressures, your cell Wi-Fi coverage. I think is a genius tip because those little things you don't think about until you move in, and then you find out when it's too late. But verify storage in the building, the laundry, elevator, and the block conditions. It's always good to walk around the neighborhood. If you're not that familiar, and kind of you just get a feel for it, and then also speak to an expert that knows the neighborhood. Ask the listing agent about seller timing, any recent work or assessments in the building, and preferred terms. And this goes into, negotiating at the end, and we are very strategic when it comes to negotiation and kind of build this along the way to best position our clients when making an offer. You're going to want to determine a front runner and BATNA, best alternative, um, and request diligence docs, which are building documents that your attorney will go over and will go over as well, which are the financials, the minutes, offering plan sections, and schedule a second look at a different time of day if it's a contender. So if you see one you love and we saw it during the dates, you might want to go and see it at night and because the experience changes and we want to make sure it's the right fit for you. So that is property search and tours. Eric, anything?
Yeah, I'll highlight that I think that there are a few things here that you pointed out that we do that are relatively unique that I think that we specialize in and do things a little differently or with a little bit more specificity than a lot of other teams or a lot of other agents. And one of them that Peter mentioned is this idea of defining the bullseye. And we think of it kind of like how a marketer identifies uh, their client avatar, right? Like what would be the perfect option? Who is the right person to sell to? Well, in our case, it's what does the perfect property look like? And when we understand that, it allows us then to try as hard as we can to aim for that bullseye, but understanding that there are going to be concessions or elements of that deal that are some more and less elastic to you. And we'll start to wring out from that bullseye to find other options. But you will know that we understand what is ideal. And I think for our clients, that's a huge benefit because they know that we're not just looking for a shotgun smattering of options without understanding what our clients want. We are looking specifically at what is ideal and then searching out from the rings from there. And then, as Peter mentioned, gathering specific listing information. The questions that you ask or the questions that your agent asks are going to, the intel that you get that is going to determine your negotiating position, your strength in any negotiation. It's gonna determine whether that property is or is not right for you. And Peter mentioned a bunch of them, but something as simple as you have a 30-pound dog. The listing says that they allow dogs, but it turns out they only allow dogs that are up to 15 pounds. So you may go down the line of I really love this apartment and it checks all the boxes only to find out that their pet policy is more restrictive or does not fit the size of your pet. So we ask questions in a very intentional way in order to get intel for negotiation purposes, but also to make sure that the property is right for you. And there's a lot of nuance to co-op and condo purchases in New York. And then I love that idea that Peter was talking about keeping that the top three in mind because when you do that, you can easily develop what he mentioned, the BATNA, the best alternative to the negotiated agreement. If property one, your plan A, starts to go into a highest and best or starts to negotiate outside of a price range that you're comfortable with, at what point do we turn and understand that their second option becomes our first option? And there's strength in understanding that. So we like to keep that with our clients, that they always understand what the second option is and and compare that option to option A or plan A so that we understand when plan A ceases to be plan A and plan B becomes plan A. And that's a powerful position for any client to be in. So that's all for that one.
Absolutely. Beautiful. All right. So now we have found the beautiful property, what is right for you, and we could move into accepted offer and due diligence phase. All right, so we got a lot on this one, so I'll kind of go a little quicker on this one, but we have the components to an offer. And then this is something our team also does different than I would say the average agent. What you're going to do, we're going to submit a revenue financial statement, which is what we talked about in the beginning, and a mortgage pre-approval letter if you're financing, or proof of funds if you are paying cash. Letter from a recognized lender. Oh, there it is for cash buyers. Proof of funds, bank or brokerage statement confirming liquidity. Include offer details such as price, deposit amount, contingencies, and proposed closing date. And these things, while we're searching the properties, and we're strategic in how we get this information from the agent. Sometimes it's harder to get this information, but we have found, I guess, ways that are the smoothest way to get it, and to
Mhm.
be as strategic for our client when we are submitting the offer. Um, Offer and counter offers. So once the offer is submitted, the seller and their agent may respond with a counter offer, which could be a change to the price that we offer, to the terms, or inclusions. The process may go back and forth several times until both sides align on key deal points, or which is what is called the meeting of the minds. This phase sets the tone for the negotiation dynamic. So everyone's different. We've definitely benefited our team from Eric's experience with negotiation and his education and training with it. So we then move into the negotiation. Your agent will advocate on your behalf to find middle ground between the buyer and the seller. Negotiation covers not only price, but also items like closing timeline, contingencies, inspection, financing, appraisal, and inclusions and exclusions, fixtures, furniture, etc. Like, are you keeping the chandelier or whatever, the TV? So clear communication and responsiveness are crucial here. So this is, nothing's worse than someone that doesn't respond or you hear a day too later. So we're always, keen on communicating as fast and clearly as possible, just to help this go as smooth as possible. Sometimes you get into a highest and best situation, and this is if multiple offers are received, the seller may request highest and best, which is a formal call for all interested buyers to submit their strongest and final offers by a set deadline. Buyers should present their top price, best terms, and proof of ability to close quickly and to stand out. Accepted offer. This is the good part. When both
Mhm.
parties agree on terms, the seller's agent marks the property as accepted offer. This is what shows on, when you're searching the properties, it'll switch over to from active to accepted offer. This is not yet binding in New York. No contract exists until both parties sign. The property is typically considered temporarily off market during attorney review or due diligence. The attorney due diligence is once the offer is accepted, attorneys will then step in. The buyer's attorney performs due diligence on the property while the seller's attorney drafts the contract. No money changes hands yet. The deal is still non binding until due diligence is complete and both sides sign. So yeah, as you can see, there's a lot that goes into just submitting an offer and then protecting yourself and what the seller's attorney communicates with the buyer's attorney. So we'll fill out a deal sheet that kind of lists all of the people involved, just to know who's responsible for what, who needs to talk to who, and kind of wrap it in a nice bow. So you get to that meeting of the minds and are able to come to an agreement with the seller. and then our goal is to get you the best price, and at whatever timeline or needs that you have, and we're good at negotiating to get that. But would you
Yeah.
like to say anything, negotiation expert Eric?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short on this one. I tend to go a little bit long when we get into negotiation, but I just like you said with co-ops and condos, we could do a whole evening on just the due diligence process and the negotiation process to get to an accepted offer. It goes without saying that having someone who is facile or who is experienced or has an expertise in negotiation is is incredibly important. Um, but that this phase of the process in New York City is even more important because what Peter said, there is this week about a week, 5 to 10 days, but usually about a week of chaos where nobody is protected, nobody is obligated because contracts are not signed until due diligence is done. And the contracts have been finalized and reviewed, and both the buyer signs and the seller countersigns, and a 10% contract deposit, or typically a 10% contract deposit, is submitted. So we have this week where neither the buyer has an obligation to the seller, nor does the seller have an obligation to the buyer. And of course, we want to make sure that we do due diligence, or that the attorneys do due diligence in an efficient manner so that they can get it done quickly without giving up any of that due diligence or shorting you on any of that due diligence. We want the attorneys to be very conservative in their approach to make sure that this property is going to work for you, there's no lending issues, that the building is in good financial health, to understand what, if any, major capital improvements or projects might be coming up. So all of that due diligence is incredibly important, but we also want to get you into contract. But before that, even as we talked about the negotiation phase of getting to that accepted offer, it requires some real strategy. We obviously, when representing our buyers, we want to come in at the lowest possible justifiable anchor. What is the lowest possible price that we can offer that is going to garner a counter offer from the other side, so that we can start to move to a price that is going to work for you, or be strategic about what that zone of possible agreement is, and get to the lowest possible amount of price and terms that we can, to save you the most amount of money. And sometimes we end up in a highest and best where we're really just kind of trying to figure out what is the least amount of money that we can spend, or the least price in terms that we can spend, knowing that there's competition. And sometimes we're alone in that offer, and we're going back and forth with the seller and the seller's agent. So this is a really important part of the process. It does take time. This is one of those kind of sometimes nail biter parts of the process, or part of the
Yeah.
process that can get a little nerve wracking. But we are there to help lead you through and get you the best possible outcome that we can.
Great, thank you. Okay. So I'm gonna go a little quicker because we're at 38 minutes here. So what
All
next
right,
is
we're
the
good.
commitment letter and board package. So mortgage commitment letter, what it is and how to get it. You're going to submit the full loan file, complete appraisal, lock rate, and satisfy conditions, income, assets, reserves, co-op, condo, co-op questionnaire, insurance binder, tax transcript. You're aiming for a clean commitment with only standard closing conditions. Keep your finances quiet until closing, so no new debt. Don't go buy a new house, or take out a credit card, job, or change jobs, God forbid, or large unexplained deposits. Provide updated pay stubs, bank brokerage statements, gift letters, and proof of funds, and maintain required post-closing liquidity. Assemble the package: co-op board versus condo app. Co-op, you're going to do revenue financial statement, purchase application, personal and professional reference letters, employment, landlord verifications, 2 years tax returns, 2 to 3 month statements, bank statements, photo IDs, mortgage commitment, Aztec forms, house rules, acknowledgements, application fees, So as you can see, the co-op is generally a little more intensive, and a little different as far as the approval process. And then with condo, you're going to have the purchase application, financials IDs, lender docs, application, processing fees for waiver of right of first refusal, and move-in deposit forms. So with condos, you're pretty much guaranteed approval if you qualify, except the building has what's called the waiver of right of first refusal. If they don't, for whatever reason, want someone to move in, they would need to purchase the condo, which rarely happens, if ever. Submit, review, and interview. So once we submit the board package, which is usually done online, some, old school co-ops in the cities will still do, everything in paper, and you print out a gigantic binder full and hand deliver it. So it's, you figure out what you need to do with that. Create one clean, complete PDF, clear file names, and hard copies if required. Pay all fees up front. Typical review is managing agent will receive this and they'll send it to the board to set up an interview with the co-op, which is either in person or via something like Zoom online. With the condo, the waiver is issued once complete and you've submitted the board package. Co-op, you're gonna get interview prep. We like to walk our clients through, what to say, what not to say, kind of. I like to tell people to be as boring as possible because they want someone that's quiet. Co-ops can deny people for any reason. They don't have to give a reason. So it's good to be strategic when going to the interview. You want concise answers, stable finances, and be a fit for the building culture. After the approval, you're going to schedule the closing, or we will schedule the closing. Co-op stock and lease. And the condo deed is what you receive, and that's your ownership, I guess, documents. You're going to wire the final funds and book your move in.
Yeah, I'll just add very quickly on this. I mean that the yes, a condo as a co-op board, as Peter mentioned, they have the ability. They're under this veil where they don't really have to tell anybody why they denied a purchase. However, I do want to be very, very clear that you'll hear a lot of horror stories out there about co-ops and the approval process and co-op boards that have this heavy hand or that are very, very secretive or just deny people for no reason. Those are very rare circumstances and often in certain types of co-ops. It's not an overwhelming um, or a regular thing that we run into. I mean, as a team, we do dozens and dozens of co-ops every year, and I can tell you I think I've had two board turndowns in my entire career of 20 years. So this is not something that happens frequently. Just to let you know, when we will know what the requirements of that co-op are, and we are hoping that we are going to sail over the bar of that co-op requirements. So we know when we submit the board package that you're qualified, and that there's very little, if any, worry that we should have about getting board approval from that co-op. However, the other thing I want to mention on this slide is the board package. This is a huge, huge deal. And whoever puts together your board package, whether it's you, if you're a direct client, you will be putting together your own board package. This is a very, very significant document in the purchase. How it's put together, the level of organization and professionalism and understanding of board packages, whether it's a co-op or condo, is essential. Co-ops, a lot of people think that condos, because it's real property and because all you get is the waiver of right of first refusal, and it's almost like a rubber stamp approval of the board package, that there isn't much of a board package. And that's absolutely not true. In New York these days, co-op board packages and condo board packages look almost identical. The only difference is in a co-op, you have an interview at the end of that board package submission, and in a condo, you don't. So there is that financial disclosure, whether you're looking at a co-op or a condo. And whoever's putting that package together, knowing whether that we can redact account numbers, social security numbers, what information can we protect, what information do we need to have in there. It's essential that you know this and that you're very clear with what the co-op or the condo association is asking for. So I just wanted to add that in there as well.
And I think too, just the most common reason the co-op would deny you is financials, and that's why we're
Right.
so good at preparing our clients with the when we first meet with them, so we don't get to this point after all that work and sorry, you're not qualified for whatever reason. So we help
And
avoid that.
along with that, you mentioned the interview process. We prep our clients for
Right.
every interview. Doesn't matter if it's a rental in a co-op or if it's a sale in a co-op. We sit down for 20 or 30 minutes with our clients to help them understand who's going to be in the room if we know, right? Who's possibly going to be in the room? What are the questions that they might ask? Do you really need to know everything about your board package and walk into that interview? We'll sit down with you and we'll prepare you for that interview because as Peter said, you kind of want to be bored. You don't want to be memorable. It's like going in and you want to show them that you are going to be a good member of this community, right?
Right.
It's not the time to ask them how late you can play your trumpet or, is tap dancing allowed at midnight? It is the common sense things, but when you're that close, you're on the 1 yard line between you and the purchase, understanding what that board interview conduct should be is also very important. And like Peter said, when you get that board interview, they've already reviewed your financial package. Now they're just taking a look at to verify is what they see in the package true about you. Are you going to be a good member of the community? And that's your opportunity to just be the kind, wonderful person you are, not to air grievances about how long the process took or anything like that. And that's an important a part of our process as well as preparing our clients for that interview.
Beautifully said. Okay. So board approval, walkthrough, and cleared to close. So approval in hand and scheduling. So once you have the interview, you're approved, the co-op within co-ops, the board approval letter. Within a condo, you'll have the waiver of right of first refusal. Get move-in rules. Some buildings are very strict, some are a little more lenient. So we'll make sure you can organize the move as smooth as possible. You might need to reserve the elevator. You might need your moving company to COIs for movers, certificate of insurance. The building likes to protect the entryway, all that stuff. Coordinate closing date with attorneys, lender, title, and managing agent. Confirm any approval conditions. For example, Aztec forms for co-ops. CTC checklist, lender and attorney. Satisfy all final underwriting conditions. Updated statements, VOE, gift docs. Provide insurance binder, HL6 for condo co-op, homeowners for townhouse. Clear title and lien searches, payoffs and building balances. Review final cash to close and closing disclosure attorney statement. Verify wire instructions by phone, which is, there's a lot of wire fraud, so you make sure you're protected with that. There's a lot of things the attorney will safeguard with that. We'll schedule your final walkthrough. So this is going to be the day of or the day before you sign the contract and finish everything. You want to make sure it's broom clean and in the same condition that when you last saw the apartment. You're going to want to test appliances. We like to bring an iPhone charger and see if every outlet works. Check the HVAC, water pressure and temp, lights, outlets, windows, doors, locks. Check for leaks, pests, and damage. Confirm promised repairs and credits. You're going to collect keys, fobs, mailbox, garage, remotes, and manuals. If issues arise, the attorneys can arrange credit or escrow or adjournment. So this is, little things we like to, as opposed to just, calling off the whole deal. We'll see if we can find an easy way to satisfy both the buyer and seller if something breaks or if they want a credit. So there's many ways to mediate that. Closing and move-in logistics. So bring an ID to the closing. You're going to sign for condo and townhouse, the deed and mortgage title. Co-ops, you're going to sign the stock certificate and proprietary lease, plus the loan and Aztec. Confirm prorations, taxes, common charges, maintenance, wire cleared funds, receive the keys and fobs. Same day, start utilities, internet transfer, insurance, effective date, USPS change of address, elevator booking, COIs to the building. And this it's a lot clearly that I just read, but we have resources that we give to you so you can easily check off, make sure you don't forget anything like turning on the electric or whatever, switching all these things you need to do. So we make sure you don't forget anything and that everything is kind of taken care of so it's as smooth as possible. But yeah,
Yeah, part of our job is to keep that organizational checklist. Like, what are the milestones and what has to happen at every step so that
right.
we're proactive and we're in front of the process rather than being reactive and finding out that we should have done something a few days ago. And that's one of the benefits of having done this many times is we have that checklist available so that we can share that with you. I'll only point out on this slide for the sake of time, because again, all of this we can go into more detail on, and any of this we are happy to go into more detail on one-on-one at any time so that you can
Yes.
add. And at the end, we're almost done where you can ask a couple of questions as well. But the final walkthrough is something that a lot of clients will ask us about, like, will I ever have a chance to go back to the apartment and see
Right.
it again before I close, before I actually like hand over all of this money and take possession of the apartment? And the answer is yes, and it's a very important part of the process. As Peter mentioned, it usually happens the day of or the day before, enough time so that if there's an issue, we can share that with our attorney. And so our role as your professional at that walkthrough is to make sure that that apartment looks the way that we expect it to look, that it is an as is apartment when we're buying a resale, right? So it doesn't mean that it'll be freshly painted or that all of the little nail holes will be covered over. That is not typically the requirement of the seller. They are just required to leave it broom swept and in as is condition. But if there's something additional, any damage that's been done, an appliance doesn't work, or there's a plumbing issue or an electrical issue, as Peter mentioned, that's typically not something that is going to end in an adjournment. It takes a lot for us to say, you know what, we're not comfortable closing. If that arises, we absolutely will back you up on that. But in most cases, it's just a matter of understanding what the issue is and either holding money in escrow at closing so that you can remedy that issue, or receiving a credit. Like if it's a broken faucet, well, okay, what is a faucet going to cost us? $150, $200? What is a reasonable amount to ask from the seller because that faucet was supposed to be in good working order? And we'll come to an agreement. The attorneys and the agents will work that out so that you feel that you are made whole and that you got credit, or you got compensated for whatever that issue is. So the walkthrough is a very important part of the process that allows us to help you make sure that you're comfortable at closing, that you're getting what you thought you were going to get.
Absolutely. All right. All right, we're at the last stage, the closing.
Woo!
So with the closing day of logistics and funds, bring government ID, confirm final cash to close from attorney's statement, CD, call to verify wire instructions, which is a fraud check, and send funds in advance so they're cleared. Keep your homeowner HO6 insurance binder active for closing. Documents that you'll sign, this differs again by property type. So for condo townhouse, deed is a little repetitive, but deed, transfer tax returns, mortgage note and mortgage rider, title affidavits, co-op, stock certificate, and proprietary lease assignments, Aztec recognition, UCC1, loan package of financing, title closer, which is condo townhouse, or managing agent co-op, confirms building balances and forms. Any adjustments that we touched on a little as well, recording and keys. Attorneys confirm prorations, real estate taxes, common charges, maintenance, utilities, credit and escrows, and payoff letters, lender funds, title issues, policy and records, deed, mortgage, condo townhouse, or co-op transfer is logged. You then receive keys or fobs, mailbox keys when funded and closed. And then immediate post-closing to-dos. Uh, yeah, we kind of did this, but we'll start and transfer utilities and internet, submit move-in COIs and elevator booking, updated UPSPS and critical accounts, set up property tax auto pay, condo and for condos and townhouses, register with managing agent and portal, and file any tax benefits you're eligible, for example, star tax benefit.
I'll point out that just so that you're clear, your attorney is with you at this process. They are
Right.
by your side at the closing table, walking you through every document that you're going to sign. That is part of the retainer that you pay an attorney. And one thing we didn't really mention is what is the cost of that? I mean, typically it's going to be somewhere around $2,000 to $4,000, depending on where you're purchasing and the level of the attorney, frankly. It's not something that we recommend that you skimp on, especially if you're buying $1 million property, even if it's a $500,000 property. The cost of that attorney, the delta between a good attorney and a bad attorney is a few $100s, and it could be far more costly than that. So that retainer pays for everything that attorney does from due diligence at the beginning of the process all the way through the closing. So they are there with you to go through all of this. Um, and uh, well, there was one other thing that I was going to mention here. Oh, the star abatement. Just to cover that, if whether you're eligible for star. That's an important thing because the star abatement is for homestead for primary residence, and there is an abatement that you get from the state for having that as your primary residence, whether it's a co-op or a condo. One thing to note is that a lot of co-ops will assess back that star abatement. So even though you might get the abatement, in many cases the co-op, if you're owning a co-op, they because there's one tax entity in a co-op, and everybody pays their pro rata portion. And we have a question about co-ops versus condos. We'll answer that in the Q&A. But because in a co-op there's one tax entity, they oftentimes will assess back that star abatement. But it's good for you to know and get signed up for the star abatement so that you don't not sign up for it, because you want to make sure that that's in place and you're getting that abatement if you deserve it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of goes into two. Here I have as a gift to you all for making it to the end. We have
Woo!
a buyer's guide here. So if you scan the QR code, I'm happy to email it as well. But that lists, that has the closing costs and, co-op versus condo versus townhouse. It has a lot of definite. So if you want to go more deep or just have something that you can reference, this is a great buyer's guide. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you,
We're
everybody.
here to answer any questions. Eric, you mentioned there was a question,
We have two questions, and I
right?
think and if we have more, then we should answer them. But I see one about what is the difference between a co-op and a condo. How do I understand that? And I think that we'll take that on a simple level, just a few minutes, knowing that to that person who asked the question, we can always go into more detail or more depth about the differences, because it's very important to know the difference between a co-op and a condo. But we'll give you the basics, and then there's another question about buyer agency, so we should we
Right.
should discuss that a little bit. So I don't know if
Oh,
you do you want to take on the co-op condo question, and
sure.
I'll fill in where I feel is necessary.
Sure. So co-op condo, it's the same thing, but it's also not at all. It's a place where you sleep and live, and it's a building, but it's financially it's structured different. The type of ownership is structured different. So I guess at a generic base level, it's just a different type of building structure. Both um, a lot of, as you can see, a lot of things I read were in co-ops, you do this, in condos, you do this. So you're going to have, the similar is going to be the board package. You're going to submit all your documents and process. In a co-op, you're going to have an interview, where a condo you're not. And when you're purchasing in a co-op, you're purchasing shares within a corporation, is a good way to look at it, which is what it is. But so you'll be assigned a certain number of shares depending on, if you buy a studio or a one bedroom or a two bedroom. And then you have proof of your ownership of those shares. And you have a little more of I guess, restrictions on how you can use the building. For example, a lot of co-ops will not let you rent out your apartment. So it's if you're an investor, for example, we kind of will, generally steer you towards condos, which is more of a free ownership where you can, rent it out. In New York, there are still some restrictions on time that you can rent out, but it's just you have a little more of a full ownership in a condo, and the prices reflect that. Co-ops are generally going to be a little less than condos, but there's a reason that comes. You get what you pay for, is kind of the old saying that makes sense with those. But co-ops are the perfect option for a lot of people, that are living in New York full time, for example, or it's their first home and their budget requires that they start at a little lower level. But yeah, I guess that's kind of the general
That's a great
way.
description. I think I'll add a couple of things, and that is that, just full disclosure, I've owned in a co-op for the last 18 years. So there is nothing scary about living in a co-op. As Peter said, they're all just buildings. Looking at two buildings, you may not even know which one's a co-op, which one's a condo. So functionally, life in a co-op and a condo is very similar, except for because you own shares in a corporation, you don't own real property. In a co-op, they can have more rules, as Peter said, that restricts co-ops from having investor ownership. For some people, that's a great thing. I happen to like the fact that there's high owner occupancy in my building. There's about 80% owner occupancy in my building. The people who own their apartments or own the shares, they live there. And we do have renters in our building. We allow rentals in our building. There is a time period that you have to establish owner occupancy, and then you can rent out your apartment after a period of 2 years. Sometimes there's a cap on subletting, it's 3 years out of every five, or a total of 5 years over the course of your ownership. So they have their restrictions. But that can also be a community building thing. It can also be something that makes, I mean, one of the reasons why the New York market is so resilient to ups and downs and fluctuations in the economy is because co-ops require a 20% or more down payment. And so you have a lot of equity when you first get into the apartment. You're not talking about 3%, no percent, 5% down. You're talking about at least 20% of equity, which is a very stable investment. And because it's a lot of owner occupancy, banks love to lend in co-ops because there's high owner occupancy. Condos you could have a lot of renters living next door to you, upstairs, downstairs, because there is no restriction. There is board approval, but there's no restriction on at what point a condo owner could sublet their apartment. They could do it on day one. They could get the keys to that apartment, put it back on the market for rent, and start looking for a tenant. So each of them have their pros and cons. As Peter mentioned, co-ops tend to trade a little bit less for a couple of reasons. One, there's no investors or very few investors in the co-op market. But about 70% of the overall market is co-ops in New York City. So it's hard to avoid them. And because there are so fewer condos, that uniqueness or scarcity brings up the price. So they tend to trade 30 to 35 percent more expensive than co-ops do. You also have a difference in closing costs with
Yeah.
co-ops and condos. So there are a variety of differences that we can go into detail with, but that gives you a good sense. I'll also point one other nugget for you. If you're confused when you're searching for properties, whether you're looking at a condo or a co-op, because it can be confusing, there's an easy way to tell. If it says maintenance, one monthly charge, maintenance, that's a co-op. If it says 2 monthly charges, common charges and real estate taxes, that's a condo. And the reason that is because in a co-op, your real estate taxes are part of that maintenance because there's one tax entity, as we mentioned. All of the real estate taxes are one bill pro rata portion for each shareholder, depending on how many shares they have. So you'll see maintenance, that is common charges and real estate taxes all together. And then in a condo, you'll have common charges and real estate taxes separately because you're paying your own real estate taxes for your parcel of property.
And again, the buyer's guide has a good breakdown of kind of the differences too, if you want to dig a little deeper in that or reach out to us. We're more than
Yeah,
happy.
happy to explain. And then the other question, and maybe we'll take this as the last question. I think it's important to ask and important for us to have a transparent conversation around buyer agency. Do you want me to cover that one, Peter, or do you want to go
Sure.
for that?
Yeah, go
Uh,
ahead.
I will just say that if you're not aware, there have been some significant changes in our industry over the last year and a half to 2 years. And it started with a lawsuit, a class action lawsuit filed against the National Association of Realtors. We are not members of NAR in New York City. We're members of REBNY. Remember we mentioned the REBNY financial statement, but the cascading effect of this lawsuit um, uh, reached all of us in all of our associations. So even though the case started with NAR, there was also a case brought against REBNY, and we have all changed the way that we conduct business in a very major way. And the broad strokes of this are that if you've ever purchased property before, if you purchased property 18 months or 24 months or beyond ago, you'll know that the seller used to have an agreement with their agent for a certain amount of commission. And if there was an agent on the other side of the deal, they would split that amount of commission with the buyer's agent. So it was always almost assumed that the seller was going to offer an amount of money that covered not only their agent, but covered a buyer's agent commission as well, if there was a buyer's agent. Well, this lawsuit determined that that was confusing and was not fair to sellers to just make that assumption. So they bifurcated the commission. They essentially split the commission and created different silos for listing agent commission and buyer agent commission. What does that mean practically? Well, that means that now the seller has a conversation with their listing agent to determine two different commissions. What are they offering their listing agent? And then what are they going to offer a buyer's agent in terms of commission? That could be zero. It could be anything, right? So, practically, we should mention that what we find is in our market, especially, that sellers are still offering buyer agent incentive in order to attract as many buyer agents as possible with their clients because about 85% of all buyers in New York City come with an agent. So we're seeing that sellers are still offering this, but it makes our relationship much more unique and specified and important because there is that bifurcation of commission and we don't exactly know what that seller is willing to offer or whether we're going to need to negotiate our commission into the deal. We now are required to have our own agency relationship with our buyers. So instead of the way that it used to be where agents would run around with buyers and there would be no agreement, no real protection for either the agent or the buyer in that agency relationship, now there must be an agency relationship. And that agency relationship can be in a couple of different ways. It can be in a per showing basis, so like a showing by showing, property by property basis. Like if we show you this property, you are agreeing that we will represent you for that specific property. Or it can look more like a listing agreement that listing agents have with their sellers, and that is based on time and specificity. For the next 3 months, we're going to work together This is the type of property we're looking for. This is the area we're looking in. And then the other very important specific information on that buyer agency agreement is commission. So we as buyer's agents, we have a commission that we earn. And that buyer agency agreement will stipulate what we earn. Now, it may be that the seller is willing to offer everything that we charge, and so that we can pass all of that savings on to you and charge you nothing. But in the event that the seller is not offering the commission that we earn, we have a couple of options. We can negotiate that commission and put it in as a part of our offer, or the buyer would come out of pocket for the difference between what the seller is offering and the agreement that we have with our buyer. Whether that's 0.25% of the deal or 0.5% of the deal or 1% of the deal, we don't know until we understand what the seller is willing to offer or if we can negotiate it into the deal. Again, it's common in our market that sellers are still offering an incentive to buyers agents, but it's also important that we have a relationship with you where there's a mutual understanding of what our services cost and how we're going to get paid. So if we decide to work together, we will talk about two different agreements that we can sign. One that's property specific, and we will do that for a period of time so that we can get to know you, you can get to know us. And then there's the time dedicated agreement, which could be a month long, it could be a day long, it could be 2 weeks long, it could be 6 months long. All of that is negotiable, and we will walk through that process and negotiate that with you so that you're comfortable with whatever agreement that we come up with. I will say that I'm obviously biased, but being in this business for 20 years, being a negotiation expert, there is an absolute value that is financial, that is risk related, that is security related, that is anxiety related, that we provide. There is a value that we offer that saves you money, that saves you that eliminates risk on your behalf and saves you the stress and anxiety of doing this on your own. The question is, what is that worth? And we'll have that discussion with you, and hopefully we can come to an agreement on how we're going to move forward together. Anything you want to add to that, Peter?
I think, I mean, beautifully said. I think the best thing that came out of these recent changes is just that it's more transparency. You know, we've always been transparent with our clients, but this kind of just makes it across the board where you know what you're going to be paying, you know what your relationship is with the people you're working with, who they represent. Am I being represented, or is the seller being, so it's, I think overall transparency is good. There's, going to be hiccups and situations where it's different, but we always guide our clients along the way, and are fully transparent and honest always with them to make sure you know what you're getting into, what you're spending your money on, and this is a huge, probably the biggest purchase of most people's lives, so we don't take that lightly, and we want you to feel comfortable and know what's going on throughout the whole process. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. If you don't mind, Peter, I want to point out one other thing because I
yeah,
think
go
you kind of alluded to it, and I think it's really important. The alternative to having someone in your corner to represent you is there are two alternatives. One is that you are going direct to the seller
ahead.
through the listing agent, but you are an unrepresented client. So that means that there's an agent on the other side, the listing agent representing the seller, but that you're coming to the table unrepresented. And there are a lot of buyers who think that somehow the savings that the seller might be getting by not having to provide a buyer agent commission makes them more eligible or will result in a better deal for them. And the question I ask a lot of my buyer clients is, how do you know what a good deal is? And if you've got a listing agent on the other side, what are they going to do in order to ensure that that seller gets the best possible deal they get, even though they may not have to fork over a commission to a buyer's agent? There is that the commission that you will pay an agent, and oftentimes it might be something that the seller's offer is offering, or at least a portion of it is something the seller's offering. The amount of that commission pales in comparison to the what you might ultimately pay in terms of price and terms if you don't have someone who's negotiating on your behalf. The other alternative is to ask the listing agent to also be your agent. And this is what a lot of buyers will do. They'll enter into a dual agency agreement where the listing agent gets to enrich themselves and collect on both sides of the deal, and they give up on their fiduciary responsibility to their seller, and they automatically give up on their fiduciary responsibility to you because they've already entered into an agreement with the seller. So they've already have a contractual agreement with the seller for reasonable care, loyalty, accounting, all of those, all of that old car that we talk about when it comes to our ethical and legal responsibility to our client. They've already signed that on with the seller, and now they're saying, "Oh, but I'll also do it for you." And that should be a red flag for you if the seller's agent is saying, "I will also be your agent," because it is virtually impossible for them to represent you with clarity and purpose when they've already signed an agreement with a seller. So I caution you for any of either one of those options, direct or putting yourself in the wolf's den or whatever you want to call it by signing up with the listing agent who does not have your interest at heart. They have the seller's interest at heart. It's like Peter said, this is probably one of the largest transactions or largest assets in your portfolio that you'll ever have. So choose wisely.
Great point. Yep.
Well, I think that's what we have in the chat. Anything
Wonderful.
else you want to point out? We went a little bit over, but that's good. Q&A is always good. It's always refreshing to get some of those unanswered questions
Yeah,
out.
absolutely. I just, thank you everyone for attending. I'll be sure to send a copy of the recording. And then if you need the buyer's guide emailed, otherwise it's here for you to scan. If you need any, if you have any questions that come up after, if you think of anything, feel free to reach out to me or Eric, anyone on our team. And we're happy to assist you or anyone you know. By either just answering questions or helping you with your real estate goals, dreams, and journey. So we're just so excited that we got to have you, and we're here if you need anything.
It's a pleasure, everybody, and to echo what Peter said, if it doesn't matter whether you're looking to purchase in the next 60 days, the next 6 months, or if you're just like, I don't really even know financially if we're ready to purchase in the next 5 years. We have worked with clients where this journey started with reviewing a financial statement and talking to them about post-closing liquidity and the amount of money that they are going to need to consummate a purchase, and they were tens of thousands of dollars away from that benchmark or from that goal. But over time, we stayed in touch. They earned that money. They created that nest egg that allowed them to then ultimately buy. And so we're here for you, whether that journey takes you, 60 days or 6 years. So reach out to us. We're very, very welcoming when it comes to just going over and giving you a financial overview of where things stand. A lot of times our buyers are much more ready than they think they are. Um, and there are, or there are segments of the market that they haven't explored yet. So, give us a call, take our time. We're willing to give it.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a wonderful evening. And we hope we see you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.